Welcome to the new tutorial connecting OPC to SAP systems. With the help of the OPC router, we can start with the vertical menu on the left, with starting at the plugins part, where on the top floor we find SAP systems. We can double click on it to create a new connection. Here I would use my already pre-configured subsys connection with a classical RFC protocol. In most cases, you would use the newer NetWeaver RFC protocol. I use direct login to my application server with load balancing. You could connect to a message server that gives you the corresponding application server at runtime. I just insert host name, system number, and client here. And under security, I use basic authentication with the username and password. Of course, you also could use secure network communications to secure your communications if you have configured it SAP. Just click on the test button to make sure that the connection is established. OK, and you can save this with OK. I could cancel because it is already prepared. Under shop floor, we find the OPC UA servers, where I also have prepared an OPC UA server connection with a client certificate OPC router training, with the endpoint to my local OPC UA server with a username and password, and I use the highest available security level. I can click on check connection to make sure that the connection is okay. And then we can click on OK to save the changings, or I can use cancel because I already configured it. Now we can directly start with a connection under local service. We can structure our connections with the help of some folders, for example, SAP connections in my example. And with a new connection button, we can create a new connection OPC UA to SAP receiving recipe data. Now we have our connection design environment here, and on the right side under data sources and destinations we can select all the source and destination objects we want to connect with each other. I would start with an OPC transfer object, OPC UA DA, by left click and leave it anywhere on the design environment. We can drag and drop it here, and we double click to edit it. Select our pre-configured OPC server, CapsFX training in my case, and with the tag browser we can browse all the available elements. I have prepared some simulation machines, machine 1, 2, and 3. There's a PLC with the production data, and there I have the product ID as production order number. Okay. And we want to send this production order number to the SAP system. So we have our transfer objects of type SAP objects. And I would use the remote function call as the corresponding technology in my example. So I drag and drop this SAP RFC transfer object on my design environment, double click to edit, and select my pre-configured SAP system. Therefore, I can now select the function group. I can just filter it because many function groups and many functions in the SAP system available. And my function starts with ZZ. Then I have a star, I filter it and find two available function groups, but I would use the ZZI40 in my example that I have programmed myself. Then I can filter the corresponding function because it is only one in my example here. So I select the ZGet recipe for product ID, and under the parameters tab I can select the simple import parameter for the production order number. You also could provide structure import parameters or table import parameters. Also for the return, here's an example for return structure. Then we can take the message for the return if an error occurs. We can select the parameter for the width, the parameter for the length, the parameter for the error code, and the color number. The same could be for changing parameters. This means parameter that you can import, change, and give back. Okay, now we can just left click on the product ID and leave the mouse button over the import parameter of the SAP function. So we connect them both by an arrow that draws the direction from where to where the data will be sent. And in addition, we want to save the information or data to the OPC server back. So we create an additional OPC server object and double click to edit again, select our OPC server, and with the tag browser we can browse the available elements. So under target data we have our target width, target length, the color number, the error code, and the corresponding error message that we have selected from our export parameter from the function. Okay, I just move it a little bit so that it look a bit more nice. So we can connect the return message in the same way we connected the product ID parameters with the SAP error message variable on the OPC server. And for the other parameters we do the same, the color number with the target color number, the error code with the SAP error code parameter on OPC server side, the length with the length, and the width with the width. Now we get the information from the OPC server, send it to the function call the function, and get the return back to the OPC server. Now we must inform the connection when to trigger the data. So we browse down or scroll down to the triggers, and there we have triggers for almost all target and source systems. In our case, the OPC server tells us when to trigger, and we want to use the message trigger as an example. We drag and drop it here. We don't have to connect it to any other object because it's just to say when to do all the data transfer here. So we double click to configure it again. So we have our same OPC server as source, and as trigger item we can insert it by clicking on the 3 button, and we use under handshaking, message handshaking, just the message trigger. We can give back an answer, right answer. With the 3 dots here we can click again and select the answer tag for the next element. And we can write an error bit to the OPC server back if an error occurs. So we can click the 3 dots and select the error bit. Trigger at start, either never or always. In my case, I would have a look if the message ID and the answer ID are not equal. So the message ID is a counter that counts up by 1, for example. And if the OPC router has done all the data transfer, the OPC router answers with the same ID, with the same counter number. So after the transfer, the message ID for the request and the answer ID have the same value until the OPC server counts up the message ID again. Okay, this is everything we need. Now we can set the connection productive by using this button on top. And we can see that we have added all the new objects. So they are green. If you edited them, they would be yellow. If you deleted one, it would be red. And then you can use this button again to set this single connection productive. If you have more than one, just select these connections on the left and use the Go Productive button. But I use this one here, and if you have made changes to the plugins, as I did, you can just say yes to restart the whole OPC router service. This could take a moment until the whole service has restarted and taken the new configuration, and then you can see the connection initializing if it is orange, green if it is ready, to wait for the trigger to trigger. And if it is ready, you see the dots to the connections when they occurred. And on the left side, on the Y axis, you can see how long the specific transfers take. And below, you see the connection and you see the values that are written to the SAP system, and you get the error message back if one is available during the return parameter. This error return is different to the error bit that is set in the message trigger, because this would be set to true, this error bit, if, for example, the SAP function cannot be called, or this SAP function calls an error or throws an error itself, so you don't get the result values. And you have the information on the PLC. If everything is okay, the bit will be set with the value 0 or false. We can check this by using the corresponding quick client for that. So you see the values in the OPC router diagnostic here, and you see the corresponding values in my OPC quick client that comes with the cap server X. You have the product ID and you get the result ID information.